You have inspired me.
That makes me feel so special.
You have.
You have no idea.
And now I know you're an ultra marathoner. I know that you haven't had a drink in years.
I will admit, my mom is an alcoholic. She still has problems with it. He's like, no, I got this. And I was like, okay. And I was like, well, I love you, right? And he goes, I know. And then he jumped. And honestly, and I mean this, such a genuine statement, your program saved my life.
All right, here we are. You go first.
You go first.
You go first.
No, you go first.
You go first,
no, you
Elise.
Go first.
All right, well, I'll go first, and it's such a pleasure to see you and get to introduce you to our You Go First audience. If you're new to the show, You Go First, the goal here is that we bring in friends of mine or people who have inspired me over the years and talk about where they're going first in their life and hopefully inspiring each of you to recognize places in your life where you're stuck and you need to go first to forgive, to take a risk, to get some more information, to make a big decision. And so I have, I'm Lain, and as the host of the show, I just look around my life and think of who inspires me, and you have inspired me.
That makes me feel so special.
You have.
You have no idea.
Please welcome Elise here. So Elise Siam, nice to see you. Thanks for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's so good to see you.
You're welcome. We're going to keep our distance today because, of course, we're in the social distancing world right now.
Strange world we're living in.
It's great to be back in the booth. But without further ado, obviously people, if they're looking at their screen and seeing it on YouTube, they will see that you have a hairstyle that is not that common.
I do, yeah.
Yes, a lot of women have bad hair days. You have no hair days.
Yeah, yes.
So we'll talk a little about how that happened and how you came to be shaving your head all the time and have just a small amount of hair still butting out up there, I think.
I know, right? It's coming out. It's coming out.
I met you when you were a little seventh grader at a leadership camp I was a part of.
Yeah.
And you were,
Springs,
out of 350 kids, you just had this light that came through.
Thanks.
And I saw you year after year after year. You then went on to help at a leadership camp that I lead for a week-long leadership camp, a number of years. Now you're a marketing and social media professional. You're freelancing out there. You're a marketing director. Yeah. So people can go to your social media. What's your Instagram? And we'll put it on, but what's your Instagram?
Yeah, it's E_SIAM007.
Okay, 007.
007, I know, still the high school, but it's still great. It's just always stuck, right? Like I can't change it. But yeah, that's where I'm at.
Awesome. So as you know, you've seen the show. This is all unscripted. So, I know you, but I just want to go on a journey. I believe in the power of conversation, and I want to capture our conversation. We've had so many really deep conversations over the years, and I'm so proud of where you are in your life now. And so welcome, and thanks for being here today.
Thank you so much, and thank you for having me. It's always so great to see you. I don't want to, man, it means so much to me to hear that I inspire you, because you have inspired me for more than half of my life. And I get to spend a lot of time with you when I'm in town, and it's always such a refreshing thing to see your face and be a part of your family, and it just means so much to me. Like even those days and that one-on-one Lain time is just above everything else, and I really appreciate it. Wow. So I'm so happy to be here. So
you're welcome. Hey, well, most of our work is so short with people where we're spending 4 hours or a day or even a week, and so I'm privileged to have spent years. I think it was like 17 or 18 years, I think we figured out that I've known you. Awesome. And this is the first time really trying to capture one of our conversations. Yeah. So let's start with just, you grew up in Chico here, and just give us a little glimpse into what life was like, and then we'll fast forward into different parts of your life. So well, tell us about you. So
I grew up here in Chico. Went to Shasta Elementary. I grew up with a single parent, one older brother, and my single mom, and it was an interesting childhood. I look back now, and there was a lot of growing that came from it. We didn't have a lot of money. My mom tried her hardest. There are definitely issues that she's still working through. I do have some substance abuse issues in my family, and we are all kind of still working through those issues. I really now at this point in my life am working on that relationship with her just because of some of those problems. But so growing up was fun. It was interesting. There's definitely still some trauma. Love her though. She tried her hardest, with what she has. There definitely a lot of hurt and pain that came from her childhood that kind of translated into ours. But my brother and I have always been very close, so it's nice to have him to kind of look back with him and grow. So So it was a little bit rough, but statistically where I'm at is kind of insane, how I grew out of that, which was interesting and fun. So I will admit, my mom is an alcoholic. She still has problems with it, and we're working through it. There's also a lot of just emotional trauma we've all kind of gone through, but growing up out of that, going through high school and working with friends and meeting, like, thankfully I had routes to choose, right? So I could choose going down this path of poverty and substance abuse, or I could choose other paths that thankfully the universe granted me, right?
Yeah.
I look back on my life and I see that first time I went to Richardson Springs, and I'll never forget that the program we do, the Cross the Line program, the challenge. Yeah, it's such a great challenge, and I'll never forget the first time I did it, because growing up with a parent that you come home and you don't really have a lot of the support that a lot of maybe other people do have. You don't realize that you're not the only one that is going through that at that age. So crossing that line and seeing other people have alcoholic parents, or have substance abuse parents, or have, issues at home, maybe abusive, an abusive parent, or it's having people like, oh my gosh, you're going through that too. That's so relieving. And then at that age, you're like, oh, cool, someone's like me. And growing up and having that realization as you're growing up really helps settle it a little.
Yeah.
I don't know how.
Yeah, well, I mean, we've been through a lot of mindfulness trainings together.
Yeah.
And, the statement that you can't see your own reflection in boiling water.
Yeah.
Like, how do you get calm so that you can really reflect on things? And in the spirit of you go first, I mean, here you are in a tough situation, and you give your mom a lot of grace and love, and I know you're constantly building that relationship, because you're the same age now as she was when she was raising you almost.
Yeah.
And it's like you have a new perspective of how hard it is.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And in the spirit of you growing up with some abuse around you, as far as drug and alcohol abuse and issues with addiction and things like that, whether it was your mom or people around you, it's like and now I know you're an ultra marathoner. Mm-hmm. I know that you haven't had a drink in years. Yeah. I think years right now.
Yeah, 17 months. Yeah.
17
sober,
months.
Yeah.
So that's the thing about you. It's like you look in the face of these things that instead of just going reflexive, you're make these hard stances of I'm going to be bald and beautiful. I'm going to be, I'm not going to drink. I'm going to push my body. I'm going to, I know you had this goal, this dream years ago when you were a little kid, I want to make six figures. I make $100,000. And I know you broke through that, and it's like, wow, how does this kid, put her life together in the face of the things that are around you? And so many people get caught up in what's around them.
Yeah. So
what would you say are your key mantras that you have gone to in those dark moments, or in those moments where you're thinking, maybe I'm not special, or maybe I can't overcome this thing? What are a couple of things that you can share with our listeners that help drive you to overcome, whether it's 50 miles of a run in front of you, mm-hmm. or, a decision you have to make?
I remember from an early age, I kind of, like I said, there was a lot of avenues that kind of opened up for me. And I've always, from an early age, I knew that this life is not the life that I want, where I was. I'm like, this isn't what I want. I know that I'm better than this. And honestly, and I mean this with all, such a genuine statement, your programs saved my life. They saved my life. I think of everything that I've learned and everything that you've taught me and the paths that I'm sorry. I get so excited because it's a truth. I look back and I think of in those moments, in those decisions, right? I can choose alcohol, I can choose drugs, or I don't that's not the path that I want. I want to be successful. I know that I'm better than this. So I think about that. My past does not define me. Where I grew up does not define me. The path that some people take, you have to choose to be better than that. And I can see, I have not had a perfect life. And there was a time in my life where I was drinking a little bit too much. And I remember waking up one morning and going, this isn't what I have fought for. I haven't made all of these decisions to now lose everything that I've come so far from. Statistically, I shouldn't be as far as I've become, right? And I'm sorry, like I feel like I need to be a little bit more articulate in what I'm saying, but it's
there's no sorry. I totally feel what you're saying, and I think our audience does too.
Yeah. So life mantra is, I've always been a runner, and anytime that I'm out on the trail and I'm thinking like, man, I really want to quit. I want to stop. But it's like, are you going to stop 5 minutes before the finish line? No, I'm not. And I'm not going to quit. And I've come so far in this. I'm sorry. I'm losing it a little.
We do this in one take, so there's no cuts and edits and stuff. This is about authenticity and the conversation of like, I understand what you're saying. Everybody has that little voice in their head that's like, this is getting hard. This is painful. Stop.
Yeah.
And I love what you just said about, am I going to stop, 20 feet before the finish line? Mm-hmm. And of course, everybody would be like, no, I'll make those last 20 feet. But it's like, well, then what is the distance between the finish line and where you are that you are willing to stop?
Yeah.
And I've honestly never had that thought before.
Yeah.
Like, think about if you're running 20 miles, of course, if you're 20 feet from the finish line, you would finish. How about if you're 100 feet from the finish line?
Yeah.
How about if you're a half a mile from the finish? How about if you're 10 miles?
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people somewhere in the middle, they have a point where they stop, where they think it's too far or it's going to be too hard, and you don't stop.
No. I it just takes me back to the adversity that I've kind of come through, right? So growing up, I had, it was a little bit crazy. When I was in high school, I had my high school sweetheart passed away when I just randomly, like a week after I graduated high school, and boom, that hit. Headed off to college, and all of that stopped. My life just kind of stopped in that moment, just like, whoa. It was so traumatizing, and so just our lives were just torn to pieces. Like all my close knit friends, just not only that, but this person I thought I was going to spend the rest of my life with, someone who taught me so much at such a young age, boom, he's gone, and he still sits with me. He's still I still feel him, and I still love him to death. And I think back on, the sad nights I had after that, the deep depression that I've gone through, and I've still, I still hit those lulls. And over the years, I've learned that even in those darkest moments, you have to find that light. There's always going to be a light. Like, you are here for a reason. And coming through all of those adversities, like, I know my light is just to stay positive, stay tough, and like be that light for other people. You have to dig deep. And in that sad moment, I come out of that by doing kind things for others, right? Like, I'm feeling depressed. I go and I do something for my friends. How can I make somebody else's day better so I can help brighten myself? Yeah. That's my big, I love making other people happy when I'm feeling sad, because it just brings that brightness out of me.
If I'm a listener out there, I have to ask for them, like, if you can give us a little about how your friend passed away. I know it's probably...
It was a summer day up here. It was actually summer solstice, so June 21st, in 2007. We went up to go swimming up at Salmon Hole, and there was about 6 of us, and we all called in sick that day. Everybody called in sick. Everybody got the day off, and we just decided it was a good day to go swimming. And his name is Troy. He has such a special place in my heart.
Yeah. For me, that's him still alive.
Yeah.
Like, you always want to feel something when you think of people you've lost. Like,
yeah. We went up, and we were having a good time, and he climbed to a spot that was a little bit higher. He was always an adrenaline junkie, always had been. And, it was a spot that was a little bit too high. And, we all kind of were like, maybe that's a little bit too much. And he was like, no, I got this. And I just remember thinking, like, man, I don't know if you got this. And so I swam out to the middle of Salmon Hole, and it's a tiny little swimming hole. It's kind of deep, but it's not that deep. So it's about 6 feet to the bottom, and he was about 50 feet up. And I remember getting in the water and kind of going to where he would land, and I look up, and I shoot myself down to the bottom and touch the bottom, and I look up, and there's only about a couple feet above me, and I'm 5'7", so I'm not too tall, but this was maybe about 8 feet deep. And I remember coming back up, and I look up, and I was like, babe, I don't think that's deep enough. And he's like, no, I got this. And I was like, okay. And I was like, well, I love you, right? And he goes, I know. And then he jumped, and I'll never forget moment, because I just started freaking out and trying to swim towards him, and he landed in about 2 feet of water. And I'll never forget that sound and like trying to get to him. It was so rough, and I was trying, like almost drowning, just trying to get to him, and all of our friends were just panicking, and we finally got him out of the water, and I could hear him trying to breathe, but unfortunately, like his lungs were punctured, and it was so rough. I'll never forget, I couldn't even be around him. Like I couldn't even spend the last few minutes with him because I couldn't stand hearing that sound. It was so hard. It was the worst day of my life, and then I think about that day often, and I think about that day often, and I think about just how, thank you. I think about, I've already had the worst day of my life, so I wake up every day knowing that it can't, like I've gone through the worst pain, somebody you love, somebody you think you're going to spend the rest of your life with, right? Like I've gone through losing them already. So how can I make today the best day of my life? I wake up and I enjoy every sip of coffee and every conversation that I get to have in the sunshine and just the breeze and running and just being out in the open. And it's still really hard for me to be in Upper Park, but now instead of finding sadness in it, I find the joy. And there's not any place in the world that I can go where I feel more whole. And it's because he's there every time.
Wow.
Every time.
Well, I appreciate you digging deep and telling that story, because, I think life is about telling stories and helping people learn from those stories and with the learnings we have for ourselves. And I've told people before, it only takes a moment to have a life-changing moment.
Yeah.
And some of them are really obvious, and that's a life-changing moment, a life-changing decision. And people, when they meet you and they see your smile and your energy and this or that, she's got it all together and she's so great and she runs. And I know some of those things that it's like, she's just crushing it when it comes to overcoming adversity.
Yeah, it just reminds me, like one of my life mantras, it's charisma is not so much as getting someone to like you as getting someone to like themselves when you're around. It is like one of my favorite quotes, right? It's like leaves everybody better than how you found them. Like, how can you create that smile every day? Because you have no idea what they're going through. For months after Troy died, I was a wreck. And I didn't know how to communicate the space that I needed or the time that I needed to be around somebody. Sometimes I just wanted to be around somebody and not say anything. I just needed a presence. And I still go through those days, of just like, man, I don't want to talk, but I want to sit and I want to be around people and I just need it, and being the type of human I am, I love hugs and I love presence and just like physical touch and just like, oh my God, friends, so like this COVID thing is kind of actually really brought back some of those traumas of like feeling so alone and like not having somebody, as a kid to like hug and like just really be around, and I love my mom with all my heart, but sometimes I'd go home, and she'd be just drunk and I just needed a parent. Yeah. And that's been the hardest part of this thing is like sometimes being sad and depressed and not having like a parent to just, I need you. Just be here and support me, and it's I have friends and I know I have you and I have Jean and other friends, but it's just different, just having that support and not but yeah, so again, going back to just enjoying every day and every person and just finding that space for each other and holding that space for each other, whatever we need, and just listening and being aware.
Well, I think one of the beautiful things is, I appreciate you telling the stories about the realities of your life growing up and your mom's struggles. And you've told me many times, like, I've forgiven her for really where she was at that time. And being a parent is a hard thing. Yeah. And being a single parent and being a parent that might find themselves in a place where they're just, losing control of wherever that is financially, and there's a lot of drug and alcohol abuse going on right now. The COVID thing with unemployment, 40 million people unemployed, I heard just today. And it's like, you are this light of like, you can overcome these things, one moment at a time, one decision at a time. Like you said, like in this moment, I'm going to choose this against some of the reflex. And that's the power of being human, is we have this ability to choose in a lot of ways. Now, I know energetically, those of you who are watching and you go, who's this Elise person? You're like, is she always like this? And yes, she is. I have seen her for 8 days, 24 hours a day with 150 high school kids like this the entire time.
Yeah, I don't sit still often.
There's just this genetic profile in you, but at the same time, life can beat us down to a place where we decide, I'm just going to disappear with suicide, or just in the way we show up. Yeah. And then all of a sudden, I know a few years ago, I was like, oh, what's going on with your hair? Like, you got a whole bunch of barrettes in here. What's up? Yeah. And then one day you're just like, you're bald. And it's interesting because you've been a real support for my niece, who also has alopecia, and she has lost her eyebrows too, and really all of her hair, and she's playing music and singing, and so I'm so proud of her.
She's such a cool girl. I love her.
So in the spirit of, for all the women who are watching, or just people who struggle with their own image, we call femage, fear of your image. What happened, and the decision to shave your head, and just how people receive you. Just tell us a little about what life is like with a no hair day every day.
Oh man. Okay. So this definitely just stems back to like first program, right? To the learning of just being yourself and just owning who you are. I think that's one of my favorite things about me, about the genuine, just this is me. If you hang out with me, you will get 100% genuine me all the time, because I'm not afraid to be myself, and there were years that go by of like, oh man, I don't know, is this too much? Am I being too much? I am not too much. I am just the right amount of everything. And I know those people that can handle me. And if they can't, then they go away for a little, and then they come back, and then they go away. And I'm totally open to that, I am here for whatever. So when it comes to my alopecia, it started when I was 19. So about a year and a half or so after Troy died, my little spots started to fall out. And I was like, oh, that's really interesting. I remember my hairdresser found it, and I was like, that's weird. But anyway, so, years go by, and it starts to like get worse and worse, and it's just like big spots, and they would fall out and come back and fall out and come back. And I've been very fortunate that it's only been my head. But 3 years ago, actually, I just had my 3-year anniversary of being bald a few days ago. And I remember a friend of mine came back from Iceland, and it's somebody I ride bikes with all the time in San Diego. And he comes back, he and his wife come back, and they're like, oh my gosh, we met this awesome girl. She shaved her head randomly. She's absolutely beautiful. Like, why don't you just shave your head? And I'm like, yeah, I've been thinking about it. And I was to that point where I was so uncomfortable. And I am a very beautiful human being. I love who I am, and I love and I mean that in the most humble way, but I think that I'm very beautiful. And it just made me feel so insecure to like have to hide me, and I could tell that people weren't paying attention to what I'm saying. They're just constantly staring at my head. And I was like, you know what? All right, here we go. So after that lunch, he totally inspired me. I called my buddy and I was like, yo, what are you doing right now? He's like, I don't know, watching TV. I was like, great, you want to shave my head? He's like, heck yeah, I want to shave my hair. He's like, come over. So we sat on his back patio, and he like cut my hair, and he bicked it. We just like bicked it on the back porch, and we took a picture, and I was like, yeah, man, this is it. Like, this is the new me. And I was like, oh, this is so awesome. And I was like on a high. I'm like, oh my gosh, I finally did it. Blah. And then I get in my car and I bawled. Started bawling. I was like, oh my God, I just shaved my head. This is the craziest thing. And for like the first like 6 months, I had to really fight to find the femininity in it all, right? So, because I am a very like outgoing, very like secure human being, but I'm also like a tomboy. I've always been a tomboy running around, but that I always get that question like, hey, like which way you swing, like which way you, and it's like, I have no issue with that, but it was always so hard to kind of like, how do I find the femininity in it, and that was always my biggest fear, and I don't know why, but I've finally come to terms with like, like just be who you are. It doesn't matter. Like, hair doesn't define me. It doesn't define anybody. Like, if you want to shave your head, shave your head. Like, if you want to have a mohawk, have a mohawk, And a lot of people ask me, like, why don't you wear wigs? And I'm like, how awkward it is going out on a date. And then you're like, oh, yeah, hey, by the way, I'm bald. Psh, you pull your hair off. People are like, whoa, like, where did that just come from? So why not just own it? Yeah. Just be who you are and own it. And it doesn't matter. Like, I always get I might have a funky head. Like, what if it's like bumpy? Who cares? Like, just own it.
I mean, I'm so glad you're here telling these stories. Because, this is like, you're at the root of like, and obviously I don't know what it's like to be a woman, but there's a lot of, women's issues around self-confidence, around the way that media puts them in, like, you should have this blonde hair and you should be this tall and you should wear this and talk like this, and just your level of, and I've seen you over the years come to absolute peace with it. And then now I've seen you at this whole new level of like calm with it.
I don't even think about it anymore.
So beautiful. My daughter said to me the other day, women is like a tea bag. You don't really know what's in them until they're in boiling water. And I'm like, that's so cool. Like, I've seen you've been in so much hot water, and there's like what's coming out of you is just more and more beautiful every year.
Oh, thank you.
It's so fun. And then, and I want our listeners to hear and really feel that they have that available to them too.
Yeah.
To look at themselves and go, I'm going to stop seeing the things I don't like about what I see in the mirror. I'm going to start seeing what's beautiful.
Yeah. I think the biggest, my biggest piece of advice, especially for women out there, man, and just to like be confident in who you are. I mean, women and men, just be people that are in your life, they will stay in your life if they're meant to be in your life. Like, you never know how long someone's going to be in your life, or like what role you have in that person's life, and that's so important to remember. Like, even if it's 5 seconds, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, a year, 10 years, 20 years, you never know how long that person is going to stay in your life. You could think that person is going to stay, but maybe they won't. So like, what impact do you have on them? That's so important to remember. Like, even 5 seconds standing in line at the grocery store and you make this person laugh, they're always going to remember that. They're not going to say like, oh, this girl at the grocery store, they're like, oh my God, this girl at the grocery store is so funny. She's bald. She like made a joke about it. It was great. Like, you know what I mean? You got to throw it out there and create that space for people to be themselves. That's the hardest thing, right? Like, when you walk into a room and you can kind of feel tension, the minute you start just kind of like, hey man, how are you? Like, what's your name? Like, welcome those people in, create that space for them to be them. And then you're going to see them blossom into who they really are. I love that feeling of like watching somebody who's just a little bit reserved, and then you're like, yo man, I'm gonna crack you, and you do, and then they're like, oh my God, I love you so much, this is great. It's like, I love that. I love hearing that. It's just so good. You know,
authenticity is this it's the most attractive quality in people. And when people see you being authentic, gives them permission to be authentic. And you do it in such an organic way that, and at the same time, when you're dealing with your ghosts, and you're authentic in that, and people are inspired by that. People are inspired to see people struggling with stuff because they know they're struggling with stuff. And it takes a lot of courage to put yourself out there like that, and to go first, to put yourself out there. Like you said, everything's all awkward, and then I go first to be like, what's up? I'm going to crack you. Like, and that's the heart of going first, whether it's going first to reach out and continue to reach out to your mom and just go, hey, we're going to find our way together, or reach out to a stranger going, you know what, it's not so bad. We can do this. And I'm willing to go first to model what the kind of world I want to have. And it's like, in the spirit of, it's not what you get from all those interactions, but it's what you become as a result of those interactions, and really choosing, like you say, I want to become like somebody who's like at peace and proud and loves myself, and I'm moving my body, and
just being real, and it was funny. So I did my first ultra marathon in November of last year. It was 50 miles. It was insane. And, you and I were talking about it earlier, about the journey, right? Like, the journey is the best part, right? And then like on race day, that's your celebration day. Like, that's your day to celebrate, but in life, it's like, life is the full journey, but you still have to find those little celebrations, right? So it's like, the day could be a journey. The whole day could be a journey, right? You get to the end of the day, you're like, oh gosh, like, what a journey that was, but now it's my time to celebrate. Like, what can I pull from this journey of the day to say, okay, cool, now I get to celebrate those little wins, even if they're hard to find.
What a cool flip.
It's just, you have to, it's just so good. But just to be real with yourself. It doesn't have to be perfect every day, kind of going back to being genuine. Like, other people might be afraid of that, because they don't know how to do it themselves. So how can we teach other people that it's okay to be real, to be themselves, to like, some people are just so afraid to show that vulnerability of being a little wacky and weird and crazy, but why are you so afraid? But like, we all have that trauma in their life. Like, somebody who said like, hey, don't do that. Don't be like that. Stop doing that. And then you kind of like, it's like the first grader. I love that example that you use, the first grader, like, oh my gosh, pick me. And the first time someone goes, they tell an answer, and the first time a kid looks over and goes, that was a stupid answer. And then you're kind of like, oh, well, now I don't want to give my example, or I don't want to raise my hand anymore. Well, no. Teach that person that it's okay to be wrong. Instead of saying like, oh, dang, no, you're right. Be like, well, no, this is just my opinion. Like, what's your opinion? Kind of flip it on them, and kind of make it a positive instead of sitting in that negative. How do we turn that into a positive?
Phew.
I love it.
Well, this time has gone so fast. Yeah. I'm feeling so sad. I love what you just said about the celebration of the journey being race day. And for me, it's like when you're in the challenge, recognizing should be a celebration of the work you've put in before the challenge to prepare yourself, whether it was, when you supported me through my cancer. Of course, I'm ready to support you through anything that comes your way, and to prepare you so you can celebrate in those biggest, toughest things that you decide to do, whether it's 50 miles or whether it's, relationship, or whether it's, your career and what you're doing with social media and how you're putting yourself out there. So, I can't get enough, but this is like, we've come to the end of the time on the podcast. Of course, you're staying with my family. My kids love you so much.
Oh,
they just were beaming to see you show up last night. And I just really, really want you to know how thankful I am that you came and told your story and dropped so much wisdom on us. I hope that people out there listening will really let the power of your words and your perspective sink deeply into them.
Thanks, and thanks again for having me. I appreciate it. Like I said, man, just continue being yourself. And I've learned it from you. I've learned everything, a lot. Most things from you, and I'm very thankful for you, so deeply.
You're welcome.
I appreciate you so much, and your whole family. So.
Well, like people say, you can lead a horse to water, you can't make him drink, but you can make him really thirsty. Before you present the water. So you just showed up thirsty. And whatever I would present, you just soaked it up, and you've really put into practice so many things that I hope I'm sharing with the world, and the power of our conversation, the power of our conversations, and
you really,
stories.
And I just have to say, like, you saved my life. You really put me on a great trajectory, and all that I do, I think about you daily, and everything that you've done for me and helped me just get through. It's amazing. I've learned so much from you, so much.
Wow.
So I appreciate you. Thank you for having me.
It's not this is authentic. It's unscripted conversation, but it means a lot. I love you.
I love you too so much.
So to all of you out there, you can find Elise on her social media, and she does go and talk to youth groups and kids out there to try to tell her story. If you want to have her sprinkle some of her perspective on your young people or whoever it is, we'll let you know how to find her. So with that, you go first out there. It's your turn.
Do it. Get out there. Go first. Go first.
Thanks for listening to another episode of You Go First. We hope you enjoyed the show. If you want to listen to another episode, you can find us at yougofirst.live, or you can see more about our host, Lain Hensley, on his Instagram at OneDreamChaser. To learn more about his company, Odyssey Teams Inc., go to odysseyteams.com or follow all their social media channels at Odyssey Teams. Thanks again, and we hope that you will go first to share our podcast with a friend or colleague. Now, you go first.
Don't forget to like us on the button below. Follow us by clicking the bell. You'll get all future episodes, as well as you can certainly find the podcast on the audio version everywhere where podcasts are found. So we're looking forward to the next episode. Got a lot of really exciting guests coming up. Thanks for watching.